And so this morning, we are in part 3 of our series as we work through the book of Philippians. The church in Philippi, that is Paul's favorite church of the 14 that he planted. He writes this book to them, writes this letter to them while he is under house arrest in Rome awaiting for his trial. And in this book, we see 3 consistent themes. We see Jesus, we see joy, and we see community. And so today we are finishing up chapter 1. We're going to be in verses 27 through 30 here in a second. But a quick recap is so far as we've gone into this, we've learned that joy is a decision. It's not a condition. Right? Joy is not based on what is happening around us. Joy is based on who Jesus is. And our joy should be based in that, not on what is happening around us. Paul, he talks a lot about suffering in this book. If you were to extend this to 4 things that this book is about, it's Jesus, joy, community, and trials and tribulations and suffering. There's a lot of that he's talking about, but he talks about in the middle of all that, you need to have joy, you need to rejoice. We should live a life of joy in the midst of our struggles. We see also that Jesus, He never stops working on us. From the day that we are saved until the day that we die, He is continually working on us, molding us and shaping us into who He has called us to be. He doesn't say, hey, congratulations, you're saved, now figure it out on your own. No, He is with us every step of the way. And last week we saw how he navigated all this because he had the right perspective, he was plugged into the right power, and he had the right purpose. And so he talks about this is how you have joy, is you got to have those 3 things. You got to have the perspective, you got to have the power, and you got to have the purpose in order to live a life of joy even when you are in prison for doing what God has called you to do. And today, as we finish up chapter 1, he issues a challenge for each one of us. Today, or so far, he's been happy and he's been, hey, have joy in the middle of your trials. And today he's like, hey, I'm going to challenge you now with something that has an incredible weight and importance to it. So verse 20, starting in verse 27, going through verse 30, says, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in Him, but also to suffer for Him. Since you were going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now you hear that I still have. I hope if you've, maybe this week you decided to read ahead and see what we're going to talk about this Sunday. And hopefully as you read it or you heard me read it this morning or as you read it behind me that you feel the weightiness and the importance of what Paul says. Paul says, whatever happens, live a life worthy of the gospel. Other translations say, above all else, live a life worthy of the gospel. Or just one thing, live a life worthy of the gospel. The Greek word, we get whatever happens. The Greek word is a single word that we get and translated into English as 2 words. It's translated as only. You know what the word is for only? Only. Only means one thing. Only. It's one thing. It's not a whole bunch of things or possibilities of things. Only means only. So when it says only, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, we should feel the importance of that. We should feel like the calling that we have in our life. Paul says, only live in a manner worthy of the gospel. The gospel, it calls for our denial of self. The gospel calls for our submission to the lordship of Jesus Christ. The gospel calls us to live a holy and set-apart life from everything else. Now, I feel like I need to give a little disclaimer here, okay? When we're talking about living a life worthy of the gospel, I am not talking about the works that you do earn your salvation, okay? Your salvation is strictly based in who Jesus is and what He did for you. You and I can never do enough, be good enough, do the right things often enough to receive salvation. All right, so when we talk about living a life worthy of the gospel, I'm not telling you, hey, get your life right, and then you will be worthy to receive the gospel. No. That is not what we're talking about. The gospel is for everybody. But Paul says once you have received salvation, once you call yourself a follower of Jesus, once you have received this free gift of grace, our lives should reflect what Jesus did in it. And as we go about from the day that we get saved going forward, our lives should reflect the gospel. Our lives should reflect who Jesus is and what He has done for us, because our actions are important to God. If you remember several months ago when we were working through the book of James, what does he say? Faith without works is what? Dead. Show me your fruit. Show me, wow, you say Jesus has changed your life. Now show me. Our lives should reflect that. How we live our life is important to God. He says, conduct yourselves. And that is a very, very unique word where we get that from, right? The translation, the Greek word, comes from the root word where we get the words politics or political or politician. So the Greek word is polis or polis. And so like Indianapolis, Minneapolis, right? That's a city. And so we get this polis word, politics, political, politician, or a city. And the way that Paul phrases this is genius, all right? Because he uses this word in a way that says the idea is that as a citizen in a state or a city or a country, as a citizen, you have obligations to follow what the government says you are to do. You have an obligation as a citizen of the United States of America to live as a law-abiding citizen. We live in Windsor, Missouri, and under the laws and the rules and the regulations that come along with living in this city, in this county, in this state, in this country, we are not free to live however we please. This is just my own soapbox I'm going to get on. The idea of freedom in America, it's not as real as we like to believe that it is, right? And if you don't believe me, go try to build an addition on your house without getting the proper government permits. Go try to collect rainwater, right? We have freedom. Do we? Don't pay taxes. See what happens. Right? They have obligations in a country that we live in to follow it. And if you don't follow those rules, what happens? You go to prison. Your freedoms are taken away. We are not free to live however we want and do whatever we please. There are laws to follow. So that is what Paul is trying to get across to these people, is that this talks about, it kind of implies this civil responsibility as an earthly citizen. And it refers to us being obligated to pay taxes, to serve on juries, those kind of things. That we are obligated to comply with the laws of that city or that empire. Now understand, and it's like, I don't know where he's going. All right, good, let me explain it to you. All right? Why would Paul talk about this? Why would he use these words to talk about citizenship and responsibilities and perks and benefits? Because the people of Philippi had a very, very unique living situation. Philippi at this point was a Roman colony. All right? It is roughly 800 miles away from Rome, and yet it's still one of their colonies. All right? Philippi was originally conquered by Philip II, the Greek king. Maybe you heard of his son, Alexander the Great. That's where we get the name Philippi, is because Alexander the Great's dad conquered this, renamed it Philippi. All right, it was under Greek rule until the Romans come in and overthrow the Greeks. Then it becomes a part of the Roman Empire. All right, now the Roman Empire is massive. So the closer that you are to Rome, the more political influence you're going to have. If you are a city or a town way far away, Rome doesn't, they care what you're doing as long as you pay your taxes, but you're not really in their sphere of influence, right? You're 800 miles away, but Philippi, even though that they are 800 miles away, they have this huge Roman citizenship. And that is because in 42 BC, Julius Caesar is assassinated in Rome. So this leads to a Roman civil war, and the two main senators who lead the assassination, they were named Brutus and Cassius. Now they're opposed. Brutus and Cassius, they've killed Caesar, and the two generals leading to go and fight them are Mark Antony and Octavian. Those are the two main generals, and so these two meet in this Roman civil war, and over 200,000 Roman soldiers collide at the Battle of Philippi. You have 110,000 on one side, you have 90,000 on the other side. This is the largest number of Roman troops that has ever been on a battlefield at the single time. This is a big, big deal. And so Mark Antony and Octavian, they win this battle, and a large number of Roman soldiers after this battle says, you know what? I like it here. I'm going to stay here. A lot of important people, they stick around in Philippi because they like what's going on there. They like the area, like, hey, we need some rulers here. And then 10 years later, Octavian and Mark Antony, they have a war between the two of them. Like, hey, who's going to lead Rome? And once again, this happens in Philippi, in the area of Philippi, and more politicians and more Roman soldiers move to Philippi. So you fast forward about 90 years later, that's when Paul is writing to them. They are a very, very Roman city. There's a lot of Roman influence. And what comes with being a Roman citizen? You got a lot of opportunities. You got a lot of good things. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of responsibilities. And if you're a Roman citizen at this point in time, you're a big deal, right? Paul, every time he gets arrested and they rough him up, he's like, hey, question, are you allowed to do that to a Roman citizen? They're like, oh, you're Roman, I'm sorry. Like, this is a big deal. Paul can't get crucified when he dies because he's a Roman citizen. There's perks, but there's also these responsibilities that come with it. Philippi is an important Roman colony because it's also a producing gold mine, and it's home to the Via Egnatia, which is a Roman road that connects the Adriatic Sea, the Black Sea, and Rome. So this is a big deal. Philippi is not just a city that we read about in the Bible. It is a big deal in the first century church. It is a big deal in that time frame. So the way that Paul phrases this, we see, hey, he's reminding the people of Philippi, you have a very special privilege as citizens of Rome. But with that privilege comes responsibility. But also, hey, I know you've got these privileges as being a Roman citizen, but don't forget, you have a more important citizenship that you're a part of. You are also, not only are you a citizen of Rome, you are also a citizen of heaven. You are a part of the kingdom of God. Yeah, I know Caesar Nero's in charge, but actually, we are also under King Jesus. And all with that, with living as a Christian, with living as a king, as a citizen of heaven, that also comes with responsibilities and privileges. So he uses these words so they will fully understand what he is trying to say. These people are citizens of the most powerful kingdom the world has ever known. There's pride. There's patriotism involved in everything that they do. And while that citizenship has perks and bonuses, it also has expectations. As followers of Jesus, we also have a citizenship that is much higher and more important than what we do as citizens of the United States. So when Paul says, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel, that is important because he's saying you are a citizen of heaven, and how you behave, how you act, has a direct reflection on who God is. And the way that he says it has 5 parts to it. Quickly. Number 1, it's a present tense. That means that every single day, this is how we are to live. This is permanent. It's not temporary. It doesn't say, hey, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel for 2 years and then you're done. No, he says, every single day you conduct yourselves as a citizen of heaven. Number 2, it's your own responsibility. This isn't something that somebody else can do for you. I can't ask, hey, Miss Bev, I need you to live a life worthy of the gospel for me today. I have to do it. My kids can't be like, hey, mom and dad are doing it, so I'm good. No. They have to do it as well. This is for each one of us. It is your responsibility. This is for, number 3, this is for each one of us. Paul's not writing to the pastor of the church in Philippi. He's not talking to the elders in Philippi. He's saying, hey, you're a member of the church. You are a follower of Jesus. This is your responsibility. All of you, every single person who calls himself a follower of Jesus has this responsibility to live a life worthy of the gospel. Number 4, this is a command. This isn't a hope or a wish. Like there's things that like, hey guys, I really want you to do this. I wish you would do this. I think it'd be benefit to you if you would do that, right? Paul's not saying, he's like, no, this is what you are to do. You're supposed to do this. This is a command from God through Paul to us. And finally, number 5, this is consistent. Paul says, it doesn't matter if I'm with you or not. This is how you're supposed to act. If I'm with you, this is how you are. If I'm away from you, this is how you are to act. This is living a life worthy of the gospel is not something that we just do at church. It's not something we just do at work. It's not something we just do when we're around our friends and family. This is something that we are to do every single day. If we are surrounded by 5,000 people, live a life worthy of the gospel. If you are home by yourself at 10 o'clock at night, nobody around, you are to live a life worthy of the gospel. Every single minute of every single day, Paul says, live a life worthy of the gospel. Paul's in prison. He might die. He is writing to the people that he loves. He's talking about what he has gone through, and he is joyful that the gospel is spreading because he's like, we talked about this last week. That's the important thing. That was his perspective. Listen, as long as the gospel spreads, I'm good. So he is joyful that it's spreading. He then tells us, hey, you have to live a life worthy of the gospel. How do you do that? How do you live a life worthy of the gospel? And that is an answer, that is a question that we have to have an answer to. And Paul, he gives us some answers here. The first thing that he does, he says, is to stand firm in one spirit. So this is a military term that Paul is using. This would be used to describe if you were to meet a Roman troop, and they were in a defensive position, they would stand shoulder to shoulder. They would have their shields overlapping each other, and they would have their spears pointing forward to the enemy. That is what would be called standing firm, all right? Your shields are up, your spears are out. It is the strongest possible defensive position. Paul is saying, hey, listen, I'm being persecuted. Others are being persecuted for their beliefs. People are going to jail. Listen, at this point, the mass persecution is not really started, right? You have Stephen, who has been stoned, but he's kind of like, what's coming in the next few years is much, much worse, right? That's when everybody starts losing their heads, all right? But he knows already this is the way it is right now. People are becoming more hostile to us, but he also says, hey, what is coming next is going to be difficult, and if you do not stand firm in what you believe, you will get eliminated. You will get wiped out. And so you have to stand firm in one spirit. Be determined that you are going to hold the line. Here's the line. I ain't crossing it. If you come across it, I'm going to fight back. I'm not backing off my line. Paul says to stand firm in one spirit. Now, depending on which Bible you are reading, depending on which commentary you read, there's some debate here. Whether this one spirit means that he's talking about spirit, capital S, like Holy Spirit, like to stand firm in one Holy Spirit, or if it's spirit, little s, like in unity, right? And so I read a whole lot of commentaries this week. I read a lot of different translations this week, and every single one of them had a different opinion. Like, oh, this is really helpful. Like, half of you say this, and half of you say this. Right? But here's what I kind of came to the conclusion of as I was doing this week, is maybe Paul meant spirit, capital S, that we are to stand firm in the Holy Spirit. We are to be full of the power that he gives us to go out and to make disciples and to share the gospel. We are to be, yes, he wants us to be full of that spirit, but Paul also wants us to be in one spirit of unity. So maybe he means both. Maybe he's saying, listen, I need you to stand firm in the Spirit. I need you to stand firm in what you believe in. But I also need you to stand firm as one body, as one church together. We all should be unified in one spirit. We should be unified in what we believe in, right? We believe that the Bible is the infallible Word of God. We are united in that. But also we are united in the fact that, listen, we are going to make Jesus famous in our community. And whatever we have to do to make that happen, we are going to stand together. Because here's the thing, nothing will split a church faster than disunity. Nothing will derail the mission faster than disunity. Here's the thing, I think I've shared this before, but some of you are new, maybe you don't. There's a lot of things I'm not going to get on to you about. All right, if you don't tithe, it's between you and God. All right, if you don't show up on Wednesday night prayer, Bible study, that's between you and God. I'm going to let you, I might encourage you, but there's one thing in this church that I will never stand for. And that is somebody who goes around spreading disunity. Never happen. Listen, I've had to kick one person out in my lifetime as a ministry. It had nothing to do with this. It had something way else to do with this. But I have not had conversation. I've had loving conversations with somebody about, hey, maybe you need to show up. But I've had multiple, in my years of ministry, sit down, you're going to listen because what you're saying causes problems for everybody around you. The people in the community, they see this stuff. They see how you talk. Oh, I don't like that church. It's got ugly carpet. It's got ugly chairs. It's got this. They hear that. Oh, I don't like that pastor. I don't like his wife. I don't like Pastor Regina. How dare they let a woman have a pastor in that role? On and on and on. And this is what I can't stand. Do you know what? When outside people see that happening inside the church, know what they think? Because this is how I would think. If they can't love each other, how are they going to love me? I'm not going. Nothing will get you excommunicated. I don't know if that's the right word, but it feels nothing will get you in my office quicker. Sit down, not just me. Listen, I'm bringing the board members in with me too. Listen, you'll wish it was me. Nothing. Paul says, I want you to stand firm together. I don't care if you don't like the color of the carpet. I don't care if you don't like the color of the paint. Is Jesus being preached? Is the gospel going out? Then leave it. Then love it. Then deal with it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. Didn't plan on that. God does not care about your opinion on colors of the carpets. He cares about you living a life worthy of the gospel that when outsider, listen, here I go again. Speaking for me, I don't want to go to heaven. I got enough stuff that God's going to judge me for when I stand before Him one day. Know what I don't want Him to judge me for also? You were such a jerk. You were so disunified. You were always causing problems that see all these people over here, they wanted to come to church, but they saw your behavior. They never went to church. That's on you. Like it's on them too, but you got some responsibility in that. I'm done now. That headache moved up way up higher now. Life is better together. You can stand much firmer when you have someone on your left and your right. When you're standing there and the enemy is bearing down on you, you are full of the Holy Spirit. You are prayed up. You are ready. But it also, when you're standing there by yourself, it's going to get a lot scarier than if you've got a person on your right and a person on your left. Because here's the thing, the person on your left, they're scared too. But they've got you on their right and they've got somebody on their left. And so we join together in one spirit and we stand firm in what we believe in. So we stand firm together, stand in one spirit. Second thing is we strive together. It says, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. Other translation says, fighting for the faith, or with one mind striving side by side for the faith, or contending together for the faith. So Paul, he's given us the defensive game plan. We're to stand firm. If you want to live a life worthy of the gospel, you stand firm in what you believe in. But then he also gives us now the offensive game plan that you strive together going forward. Think of, listen, this is a bad example, but it's the best one I can give, all right now. Remember last week when the Ravens thought they were going to win, and that dude just reached out, and the ball got knocked out of his hands? Right? Like, haha, you lost. The point is that was the effort, right? He was striving to get that ball across the goal line. That's the kind of the imagery that Paul is saying, is that you are fighting with everything that you've got to get the ball across the goal line, that you are going to strive together for the faith. Nothing will halt the mission faster if we are not together in what we are doing. The idea is that we are striving, we are contending, we are going all out for the faith. And the faith, this is an all, what do you mean by the faith? The faith is the all-encompassing word for the Christian faith. It covers everything. We are united in all aspects. We stand firm together. We are on the offensive together. We are a community of believers doing life together, fighting together. We are of a single mind, a single purpose, which is to make Jesus famous and stand firm on the truth that is God's word. Our faith, your faith, is worth striving for. There's a few things in life that are worth striving for. Right? Your family, your spouse, your kids, and Jesus. Those are the things that are worth striving for. Our faith, it must not be compromised. Our faith is the basis for our unity. Then Paul says, number 3, do all this without fear. He says, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. Never want to sugarcoat anything Paul is saying. Listen, he gives us a hard truth here. You are going to face opposition. You are going to face people who oppose you. We are going to have hard times. We are going to face persecution. We are going to face that opposition. And Paul's solution is, I know you're scared, but speak up anyway. Don't let the fear stop you from saying what you need to say or doing what you need to do. Methodist evangelist E. Stanley Jones commented that the first Christians didn't wring their hands in despair and say, look what the world has come to. Instead, with great delight, they declared, look what has come into the world. And if we will have that mindset, some of you didn't get that, you'll get it here in a second. Instead of worrying about, oh my goodness, the world is going to hell. Oh, it's awful. I don't want to do this. Instead of focusing on how bad the world is, instead focus on, hey, there's this guy named Jesus, and 2,000 years ago, he came to this earth. And if we will focus on that part and not the how bad the world is getting to part, it will give us this spirit. We will not be afraid. We will push forward. How do you live a life worthy of the gospel? You don't cower in fear when the opposition comes. Here's the reality. I like you. Your mommy likes you. But not everybody's going to like you. Listen, I'm wonderful. I'm special. I know. My mom told me every day I'm a special boy. Katie tells me the same thing. I'm the light of her world. I make life worth living for her. How she's the most blessed person to ever walk because I am her husband. But not everybody likes me. Not everybody does. Listen, it's just not everybody's going to like you. Because when you stand firm in what you believe in, people are going to get offended because you're standing firm and in opposition to them. And Paul says, listen, I don't care if they don't like you. I don't care if they don't like your message. I don't care if they're trying to do whatever they can do to stop you. Our job is to not let that happen. Our job is to continue to preach Jesus. Jesus said, hey, they hated me. They're definitely going to hate you. And here's the cool thing. If we keep reading there, the truth here is that this is a battle against good and evil. And Paul says, hey, guess what? We're going to be in this battle, but we win. He said, this is a sign to them that they will be destroyed and that you will be saved. We're not going out to fight a battle that maybe we win, maybe we lose, maybe we get slaughtered, no, we win. We may take some bumps, we may take some bruises, we may have some heartache, we may have some pain, but guess what? If you keep striving together, striving as one, if you stand firm in your faith, if you do not cower in fear, you will win. Our lives are written down in the Lamb's Book of Life. We should live as victors and not victims. Quit allowing fear to stop you from doing what God has called you to do. If God has told you to do it, don't let other people influence it. Do what He tells you to do and watch what happens. Worship team, you guys will come up. When we face trials, we cannot forget that we're a citizen of heaven and to live a life worthy of the gospel. Pastor Tim Keller says, because the gospel is endlessly rich, it can handle the burden of being the one main thing at a church. The endlessly rich gospel is to be the center of everything in the church. Everything that we do is based out of what is the gospel. So what is the gospel and how is it so endlessly rich? The gospel is the news that our Creator has taken our sin upon Himself in the Son and granted us new life. How is the gospel so endlessly rich? Because it's the message of an endlessly rich Savior. Jesus is inexhaustible. His grace is never ending. His mercy is never fading. His glory is never ceasing. His love is never failing. Jesus will never leave you, forsake you, and promises to complete the work that He began in you. Jesus is big enough for all your sin and all your failure. He unites us despite of our differences. He leads us despite of our foolishness. He serves us despite of our unworthiness. He loves us despite of our rebellion. Jesus forgives us completely because He saved us utterly. He cleanses us thoroughly because He redeemed us wholly and sacrifices us perfectly because He restored for us sacrificially. That is what the gospel is. It's the never-ending good news of what Jesus did for you. And if you were to live a life worthy of the gospel, that means that you go out and you live that life every single day. Because of what Jesus did for you, you are going to go on and share that with somebody else. Will you stand with me? Only Jesus and His gospel is big enough to stake our entire lives on. And that's what Paul wants the Philippians to do. Stand firmly upon the rock of Jesus and never leave, showing the world just how big the gospel really is. When other people demand our allegiance and our utmost affections, we must remember whose we are. That Jesus alone is worthy of our worship. We may be citizens of the U.S., just as the people in Philippi were citizens of Rome, but this is just our earthly home. We may love our country, but we can't worship our country. We may align with one political party more than the other, but neither of those political parties can save you. We must refuse to let anything become bigger in our lives and in our church than Jesus and the gospel. In these days, that takes courage, because here's the thing. We live in a world where our message is seen as hostile and hateful and mean. We live in a world where it's oppressive and evil, where our insistence upon biblical truth is hateful. You believe in traditional marriage? How dare you be a bigot? You believe that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl? How dare you have that opinion? You think that babies are born, that heartbeat like at conception, that's when the life starts? How are you so angry and mean and hateful? Because this is why you may feel that way. Because the Bible is offensive. It's offensive to me. It causes me, when I read it, it causes me to look at things and say, all right, I've got to change this about myself. And when we stand upon that truth, people don't like it. And they're going to call you names. You may lose some promotions. You may not get that job that you wanted. People may quit talking to you, but you are standing firm in the Bible because the Bible is truth. And the fact that we are citizens of heaven is more important than being a citizen of earth, being a citizen of the United States. Quit putting your hope and your faith in stinking politicians. No. Here's the thing. We may be viewed as hateful, but the reality is we're not against anyone. We're just following Jesus. And Jesus is the king. He sets the rules because he is the king. These are not my rules. These are not our rules. This is what Jesus says to do. And we can live a life of the gospel, worthy of the gospel, and we can do it in a loving way. We can do it in a sincere way. We don't have to be mean and angry. We don't have to go around, you're a dadgum, we're a nasty sinner. You can call a person, you can call sin, but you can do it in such a way that is loving and attracts them instead of pushes them away. This does not give us a license to be angry and mean and disrespectful. Doesn't. It gives you a life to love. It gives you a license to love them the same way that Jesus loved you. And listen, I know what your mama said. I know what your wife tells you. You know what your husband tells you. Sometimes we're not easy to love. And yet Jesus does it anyway. We live a life worthy of the gospel as we take what the Bible says and we do not veer from it. When He says jump, we jump. When it says move, we move. When it says stand firm, we stand firm. When it says do not cross this line, we do not cross this line. We do what it tells us to do. If you want to live a life worthy of the gospel, you are in His word and following wholly and completely what He has for you. And maybe that's going to lead to some hurts in your life. Listen, I'd love to tell you I have every relationship that I've ever had in my history of ministry or life. Sometimes people don't like it when you change. Sometimes people, they don't want to, they feel like you change, whatever. They don't like it. It's not about what they want. It's about what Jesus wants. Our government may not like it that we stand. Marriage is between one man and one woman. That if you were born a boy, you are a boy. If you are born a girl, you are born a... They say that's hate speech. The Bible doesn't change. Now, once again, we don't have to be a jerk about it. We don't have to shove it. We don't have to listen. You don't have to fight every single ridiculous, stupid battle, especially on Facebook. Listen, I'm going to make some people mad. I would argue that 90-some%, maybe 99% of the Facebook arguments that I see between Christians and non-Christians, the Christians are not living a life worthy of the gospel. Oh, I'm standing firm. No, you're being a jerk. You're talking to somebody, why don't you take them out for coffee? I'll buy. Come talk to me. I'll give you $10. Take them to coffee. Build a relationship with them. Then talk to them. Don't just yell and scream and calling names. There's nobody meaner and angrier than church people sometimes. That is not living a life worthy of the gospel. Living a life worthy of the gospel is to reach out to them and say, hey, listen, let's go get coffee. Let's go to lunch. Come over to my house. Let's break bread together. Let's build a relationship and we can talk about our differences. We stand firm. We don't care what the government says. We don't care what our state says. We live for Jesus first. That is what living a life of the gospel is. A lot about standing firm for the outside world. And yes, we're going to stand. And that's part of it. But don't miss the part of the gospel where it calls you to repentance. Don't miss the part of the gospel is not for everybody else except for you. Listen, as much as we love Jesus, as much as we want to honor Him and live for Him, there are times when we get out of that alignment and the gospel brings us back in. So the same energy that we stand firm in proclaiming the gospel to others and calling non-believers to repentance, We need to have that same energy when it comes to bringing ourselves, allowing the Holy Spirit to convict us if there's something that needs to be brought back into alignment. Living a life worthy of the gospel is not just about spreading the gospel. It's about whatever is in our life that needs to get fixed. I don't know what it is. I don't know what you got in your life. All I know is you got something. You know how I know that? Because I got stuff. Everybody else has got stuff. We all got stuff. I don't want a perfect person to come to this church ever, because it'll mess up what we got here. I love my church of imperfect people. Makes me feel better about myself. So keep that in mind as well. Living a life of the gospel is for you as well. When God brings you back into correction, when He brings you back into alignment, accept it. Best is yet to come for us. The best is yet to come for you. I am so grateful that I get to be a part of it. If you are newer here, there is a Connect card somewhere on the row in front of you. Would you do us the honor and privilege of filling that out and giving that to us, just so we can have your information? We can follow up with you if you have any questions or comments or whatever. We would love to connect with you. Also, there's something else. I'm drawing a blank, so I can't remember what it is. Next week, don't forget Gatorade the Pastors. I think it's gonna be like 60 degrees next week. So yes. That's going to be wonderful. Yes. And then Wednesday night, Pinewood Derby. Be here. Come support the kids. There's going to be food. We're going to have all sorts of awards. The kids have worked on their cars for the last 4 or 5 weeks. They are excited about racing next week. It's going to be awesome. Come Wednesday night. And I believe that is all that I have. If you are new here, if you are looking for a church home, listen, I think we got the best church around. And we want to be your church. I want to be your pastor. Like I said a minute ago, the best is yet to come for us. Pastor Regina, we close this out.
Lord, we're so thankful, Lord, that you came into our midst, Lord. You heard our cries, Lord, and you listened to our hearts today, Lord, and we thank you for that. Lord, as the pastor has brought your word and reminded us, Lord, that we need to stand in your spirit, Lord, and stand in the kingdom of Christ, that you've linked arms with us, Lord, and help us to remember that each day as we go out this week, Lord, that your gospel would be shared by the way that we love and the way that we live. And Lord, that you would be glorified in all that we do each and every single day. We thank you for each and every heart and each and everybody in this place, Lord. And we ask that you would bless them and bless their family. And in your precious holy name, we say, amen.